Hey guys, I'm Randy Unger of Unger the Radar, and with me is co-host of Nostalgia Time, Matt Haberman, aka Kid Champagne. Hey Matt, how's it going?
Hey Randy, good to be here. I'm Kid Champagne, ready to pop off the champagne.
Yes, and we are popping off the champagne to the classic 90s horror series, Are You Afraid of the Dark? Basically Twilight Zone for kids. It's a fantastic show. It's been revamped. And it really it's still with me 25 30 years later, after seeing it as a kid. And with us today we have a wonderful panel of talent from the original series. We've got series creator DJ McHale. How's it going, DJ?
Good. Co-creator with my partner Ned Candle.
Yes, co-creator. Very good. Also actor Jason Alisharan, who plays Frank. How's it going, Jason?
Hi guys.
And last but not least, we've got actor Richard M. Dumont, who plays Sardo, not Mr., and emphasis on the dough.
Exactly. Hello. Hi. How are you?
Good. Welcome, guys. This is amazing. I'm so happy you could make the time to do this today. Basically, Matt, do you have the first question?
Oh, yes, I do. And this is actually for DJ. First off, I'm a big fan of Are You Afraid of the Dark? I've been watching it from the start back in 1990. So my question to you is, how did you develop the creativity for Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Well, I'll try to give the short version. I was hired by my co-creator, Ned Candle, to write a series based on the Encyclopedia Brown boy detective books. And we made that series for HBO. I didn't produce it, I just wrote it. And we decided after that, hey, let's make our own show. And Ned had just finished doing a direct-to-video. This tells you how long ago it was. It was a direct-to-video time. He just done a direct-to-video project that he made a lot of money on. It was really successful. So he said, hey, maybe we can come up with something that's a direct-to-video. And so the idea we came up with was, we didn't call it this at the time, but looking back on it, it was bedtime stories for lazy parents, which was the idea is we get some old time actor sitting in an easy chair in front of a roaring fireplace with a big book that said fairy tales. And he'd read fairy tales, we'd record them, we'd package it, and we'd somehow market these things. We hit a dead end when we couldn't decide which kinds of fairy tales to do. You know, it was like Little Red Riding Hood, Three Little Pigs, nothing sounded interesting. So Ned asked me the infamous question. He said, what kind of stories did you like when you were a kid? And I said, I like scary stories. So fairy tales became scary tales. Suddenly having the old guy in the chair was odd, you know, reading scary stories to little kids. Come here. So that went away. I'm like, well, what can we do we don't want the storytellers to be scary. So where do you tell scary stories that's not scary? If we're on a campfire. Let's have kids sitting around a campfire telling scary stories. But then why just tell them? Why don't we see them for real? Suddenly the budget went up. And suddenly it's no longer a direct-to-video project. It became a show. So that's when we took it to Nickelodeon. And that's how, that was the thumbnail version of how the history of the beginning of Are You Afraid of the Dark? And it was off to the races from there.
That's awesome.
Wow. That is great.
Yeah, I love hearing origin stories, you know, how something can just turn into basically a seed and just grow from there, the evolution of it. And people are still enjoying it to this day. So it's a great show. And I'm curious, Jason and Richard, how did you get involved with the show? What was your audition process, Jason?
I was living in Vancouver, just an actor, and I ended up auditioning. They were auditioning all over Canada, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, I think in the United States as well. And I was actually in a play and I was touring, and I wasn't even in Vancouver. And so I read before I went on tour, and then I was out on tour, and then they were like, well, we want to do like callbacks. And I'm like, I'm nowhere near Vancouver. And I think we sent them a tape, but I didn't really have any hopes because I couldn't do a follow-up. And then I remember being on tour and getting a call, and everybody like, oh no, they're casting you and you got to go to Montreal in like 2 weeks. And it was my first like real credit in film and television. So I was incredibly excited. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience, you know, mostly because of DJ. Like, I mean, again, I've gone on to do other things since then. I have too many stories like the one that DJ's had. So to have your first experience with somebody like DJ, who's not only talented, but he's also just a great man, is just, it never happens ever. So that's my story.
I should say that so Jason was cast as Frank, who is the, for lack of a better term, the tough guy of the Midnight Society. And I guess it's a little thing called acting, but he was the least tough guy you can imagine. He was, it's so fun to see it. It's like, oh, he's pretty good at that acting thing. He's the sweetest guy. And his family is the sweetest. Oh my God. Talk about the anti showbiz family, you know, behind the scenes. They're the loveliest people. Oh my God. It was so great. So it's funny to see him being like Mr. Tough Guy Frank. It's like, yeah, well, acting.
I love when that happens.
Yeah. And if I remember that right, Frank, yours was the first tale in the show. You did the pilot, the Tale of the Phantom Cab, and I remember like the character was it Dr. Vink, the How do you feel like doing the pilot episode?
I mean, look, just to be a part of it, I loved it. I mean, look, it was really the first time I was ever on camera. So it was incredibly exciting, and just to be a part of it. And I mean, just even to be on set and to experience that for the first time, watch them DJ shoot it. So I was thrilled. I mean, look, guys, I'm going to turn 44 next week or in 2 weeks. So this is 30 years ago. I was 14 years old at the time when we shot that. So
I should say that actually wasn't the pilot episode. That was the first episode of the series. The pilot episode we had shot several months before with almost an entirely different Midnight Society. So Jason wasn't in the original Midnight Society. I would love to find that tape someplace of that, or maybe I wouldn't like to see it. Maybe
the original one with the original cast. It's on
the original cast. I don't think I want to see. There's only one person that made it from the original cast to the series cast, which is Ross Hull, played Gary. And he played David in the original thing, and then we moved to Gary and stuff. So Jason was in the first episode of the series, but we'd already had the pilot about 6 months before.
Richard, how did you get your part? The part of Sardo?
I was on set for the current show that I was doing at that time, sitting in a rocking chair reading scary stories to children. And got this call. Go figure. That series went nowhere. But Are You Afraid of the Dark now? I was in Montreal. I just moved to Montreal from Toronto. I just moved there, and just got the call in for this character. And I remember going in. Honestly, DJ, I can't remember if you were there for the audition. I honestly can't. I remember Ron, only because he went on to direct that particular episode, the Magic Specs one, and I remember at that time I had my hair fairly long for a show that I was doing, and I tied it into kind of a bun, you know, the way you tuck it into the back and all that. And someone in the room said, "Well, take your hair down, pull it down, pull it down." And I did, and then I did the scene, and I was lucky enough that I got the role. They wanted me to try a little bit of some kind of an accent where you might sound educated, that sort of thing, and they let me run with it. And it was I was just so blessed to get that role, because it was just phenomenal for me. It really was. And they liked that character so much that they had DJ wrote more and had him come back, and DJ directed some of the Sardo episodes. But I was just blessed. I was really, really blessed with that character.
The character Sardo was boy, it's a real success story, because, and it was it sounds so cliche, but it was like a real team effort. You know, it started on the page that I had some idea, and when you write something on the page, you have a vision, but it's ultimately not going to be what the final thing is, because then you cast, and we bring in an incredible talent like Richard, and he brings himself to it. And then we had the hair, makeup, and wardrobe people who brought something else to it. And then Ron Oliver, who directed it, brought his own sensibility to it. So it was all a team that came together that created this amazing character. And you could tell from right in that first episode, it's like, this has got legs. This is going to work. What else could we do with this guy? And so that's why Richard came back. You were in every season. I think you're all 7 seasons.
Yes, I think I beat Dr. Vink by 1 episode. I think I did. Yeah. I want to say I did 7 or 8. I can't remember now, but I know I beat him by 1 episode.
Yeah, right. But I'm losing on my
resume. That's on my resume.
In fact, I have a. I have a thing that's on my wall here. It's the one and only time those two characters actually were in the
Oh my gosh!
Oh, nice.
Oh my gosh, I
That's
haven't seen
great.
that.
That was,
Oh, that was a double. That was a two-parter.
Yeah.
That was a treasure cutter's treasure.
Curtis Rice- so I'm, and Jason told half that story, and he already told you half of the story. But to have these two guys, the one I like had chills when we shot the scene. It's the only scene you two were in it together. I think.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
just had
That's
chills
right.
seeing you two play off of each other. It's just like,
Wow,
they're
That's great.
when you're
that's
creative.
a great shot. I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
And that was actually a screen capture too. It wasn't even a photo, but to have two of your creations together with these talented guys, I was like in tears. I'm like, oh, this is so awesome! Like, how much fun is this?
Oh,
So cool.
That
Sorry, Matt.
that was one thing I wanted to also play. I mean, it was mostly that was Frank's character, Dr. Vink, in Are You Afraid of the Dark? So how is Alan Tager? How is it working with him? I know that he passed away last year, sadly.
well,
But how was it with him?
I had seen Aaron on stage a couple of times. There's a theater just outside of Montreal in Lac Brome, which at that time was called the Lac Brome Theater, and I think it's changed its name over the last couple of years. So I saw him there in a couple of shows. Brilliant actor.
Mhm.
And so it was great to for me anyway to be with him in that episode. That I think it was a double episode, as I recall. It was fabulous. It was really, really good. I mean, he was just such a talented actor. Truly.
And a real sweetheart too.
Oh yeah, absolutely, DJ. Absolutely.
It's so sad that, and he passed. You know, it's
Yeah. I got to do, I don't know if you know this, DJ. I got to do a kind of a reunion, if you will, with Ross and Aaron, myself. We did it in Toronto for a Halloween presentation, I think 3 years ago. I think three or four ago, and that's the last time that I saw Aaron. And he came in costume, and I came in costume as well.
Oh, I would. Oh God, I wish that was recorded. I'd love to see
Yeah.
that.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun. I swear to God, my hand to God, I pulled up in front of the theater. I think it was the Royal Theater in Toronto. I can't remember now the name of the theater. I know I'd never been there, but it's an old majestic theater. Hand to God, I pull up in the cab, and there's a lineup of people around the freaking block. I'm not kidding. I thought, what the heck? I was told that it sold out in 20 minutes. That's what I was told.
Oh.
I didn't believe it. This is a number of years after the fact, after Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Right.
And I couldn't believe it. The fans were just, and then they had to sign, the photos and autographs sort of thing. The line went from the stage through the whole theater into the lobby. It was really remarkable. That's how much the fans adored this show.
It's really pretty remarkable. And I don't know if with you guys, but I wasn't really aware of that until recent years. And I have a theory. That 90s kids are now starting to feel their own mortality.
Yeah.
So suddenly 90s is becoming a thing. It's nostalgic and whatnot. Not just Are You Afraid of the Dark, but all things 90s. Yes. So I talk about the show more today than I did back when it was on. It's real. I mean, there was like a period of like it didn't exist, and now suddenly, because of social media and all that. Kind of stuff. Sure. I had a really similar experience with Ron Oliver about 2 years ago. I was asked to speak at a horror fest in Long Beach, California, out here, and do an Are You Afraid of the Dark panel. So sure, and so I got Ron to come and join me to do the panel together, and it was down at a convention center, and the theater that the panel was going to be in was kind of away from the convention center, and it was a huge theater, and so we showed up, an hour before or whatever, and we looked at this empty theater. It's like, oh boy, this could be embarrassing because also it wasn't even really part of the convention. You had to like work to get to this thing. So Ron and I were down in the green room, and we're both kind of like, we may be talking to each other here. This this may not be so good. There'll be 4 people in the front that hopefully they'll have questions. And the 2 of us were in the wings, waiting to start, and so we couldn't see the audience. But Nickelodeon had sent this kind of little promo thing they had done for Are You Afraid of the Dark, which was going to kick off the panel. We hadn't been introduced yet. And the second that it opened up with the opening title sequence of Are You Afraid of the Dark. And so we were watching from the wings, this thing comes up,
and the room explodes.
Yeah.
And I looked at Ron just like, what the heck? What is this? And I don't know if it was a sellout, but that place was jammed, and it was just a love fest. And to go out, it's really wonderful to have done something. And I hope you guys feel the same way, to have done something that years later people remember it, still enjoy it, and people are still finding it today. I got a question. Oh my God, just like turn on the computer to talk to you guys. I got a question from a guy asking me about the credits from Old Man Corcoran. I'm like, I don't know. What did we make that episode? I don't know. So
but yeah, the show is probably more popular now than ever due to the nostalgic factor. Totally agree with that. The name of this show is Nostalgia Time, so that's pretty appropriate that I have it, guys. Jason, I'm curious, as a kid, 14 years old, what was it like being on set? Were you tutored? What was it like being a kid actor?
I really enjoyed it. We had a tutor. I was a very, and DJ knows this, I was a very nerdy kid. Academics in my family was a big deal. So we had this tutor, and people always ask me.
You went to Stanford, didn't you?
Right, yeah, exactly. So a lot of my time when we weren't filming was doing homework. Like people ask me, well, what was Are You Afraid of the Dark like? Well, I was like, well, I was doing homework on empty sets or in my hotel room on weekends, and we had a tutor, and I think he would come by me and I would just shake my head. I was like, just go somewhere else. Like, but it was exciting. The out of town actors were in this one hotel, and we would hang out together and we would shoot, and it was kind of like a family. It was just a really, I think I did between the ages of 14 and 17. So it was a great time. And Montreal is a great city, great food city, It's pretty great, pretty terrific.
Cool. Would you show your kids Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Sure. We don't have kids, but as you guys said, it comes up a lot. Like my wife and I got married in 2013, and she was showing the wedding pictures to some coworkers of hers, and her coworkers, I guess, were like 7 years or 8 years younger than she is. And they knew who I was. They saw the wedding pictures and were like, that's Frank. Like, that's crazy to me. So yeah, the show obviously has legs. I think the thing I love the most is it was clearly a very important part of a lot of people's childhood. And that's the kind of affinity they have for it. And when they come up to you or they email you, or you can feel that. And so to be a part of something like that, I think is really special.
Yeah, I think this show was like the introduction to horror for pretty much all 90s kids. It was just a nice, digestible form of entertainment. It wasn't violent, really. It was extremely creepy in some parts.
There were some
of it was very scary.
Yeah.
Very scary. It's funny, someone just used the term sort of a Twilight Zone for kids. And that's an expression I've used for many years. That's exactly what it was. And some of those episodes were scary. They really were. They were very well written, and as Jason was just saying, at this convention I was talking about, is that the parents were coming up with their kids, right? and you could clearly see, and from the stories they would tell, how much Are You Afraid of the Dark meant to them in their growing up, for sure. Absolutely. And now their kids are watching it,
It wasn't even just scary though. I mean, and it's a testament to DJ, like how many boundaries he decided to break. I mean, to begin, you started off the panel, you talked about how I was playing the tough guy. Well, back in those days, ethnic actors, that's what you played. It's a little bit different now, but DJ decided he was going to cast multicultural couples. You didn't really see that. They actively decided to do that. And the episodes were scary. They were also incredibly emotional. One of my favorite episodes was the Shiny Red Bicycle, about a kid trying to get over his buddy that had died. I mean, it was the storytelling was exceptional.
Well, you guys, Twilight Zone is really a great analogy, because our goal wasn't to scare kids. That our goal was to tell, the Twilight. When you think about it, Twilight Zone wasn't really that scary.
Yeah,
it was just thought-provoking and odd and a little bit disturbing, and there were usually morality tales and whatnot. So over the course of a season, when I choose which scripts to use and whatnot, I try to get a variety of different stories. And there were some romances. There's some deep stories about the kids. When people would pitch me a story, they inevitably would start with, I said, okay, what story do you have? I'm like, oh, I have a story about haunted hand sanitizer. And if you use, and they're like, okay, cool. Who are the kids? They're like, a couple kids. Anyway, if you use the hand sanitizer, it makes your hands invisible. Like, okay, so who are the kids? They're like, who cares? Like, no, I want stories about a couple of kids that you're interested in what they're going through.
Yeah.
That you'd be interested in watching them, even if they never got haunted hand sanitizer. Because then when they get haunted hand sanitizer, then you're with them. Like that one, I mean, as much as Sardo is such a fun, silly character, one of the more dramatic episodes we did was the Dark Dragon, where this kid was actually physically handicapped.
Yes.
And no one liked him. And so Sardo sends him some popularity potion, which that's the fun thing about Sardo. Sardo has no idea that any of the stuff actually works that he's selling, but it all does, to no surprise of his.
And he's just as amazed as the kids, and it works.
He's just as amazed as the kids. So, and there's a story about this kid who takes this, it was a Jekyll and Hyde story, and it's really deeply, so even though it was a Sardo silly, fun story, it was also deeply dramatic. And over the course of any given episode, a season, there'd be a variety of those shows, and it kind of, one thing I lament a little bit is when you read people giving today and social media and whatnot, they base their liking of episodes based on how scary they were. And it's like, okay, that's fine, but that really, there's a lot more going on with that show than just the scariness of it. Believe me, there are plenty that were scary, but there's so much more to it than just the scary. And I think that's why it has resonated and stayed popular over the years, because there's so much more going on than just the boogeyman coming out scary.
DJ, I'm curious. Back in the 90s, did you ever get complaints or angry letters from parents saying that the show might be too scary?
Not one.
Good.
At least not one that ever made it to me.
Okay.
The early on mandate was Nickelodeon was afraid of that might happen.
Yeah.
In fact, when we first pitched them the show, they rejected it. They said you can't scare kids because no one had really done it. And then they thought better of it, thank God. And we did it. But the guy who was the head of Nickelodeon at the time said, as best as you can, try to base some of the stories on literary antecedents, so that if a parent, suddenly there's pitchforks and torches at their door to say, well, you're killing our kids here, they can say, why are you talking? This is classic literature. What are you talking about? To the best of my knowledge, that never happened. And it's because we weren't gratuitous with it. And because we were not gratuitous with it, a couple times we got away with some stuff that might have been, I look at it now, I'm like, ooh, that might have been a little bit over the top, but for the most part, no, because they're interesting stories. And there's a term it was used back then, but it's really used today too, is the concept of co-viewing, where so many parents, they don't want to see those kid shows their kids are watching, but if you can come up with a show, and there've been plenty of them, that it won't kill the parent to sit down and watch it with. They may not turn it on by themselves, but they will sit with their kids and watch it, and they'll be engaged. And Are You Afraid of the Dark was one of those shows that did that, and I think that's another reason why it's had such legs over the years.
It's still, I still watch it to these days, and still, like, there's some of my favorite ones, and some of them are scary. Like one of them, The Tale of the Quicksilver. That is one of the most scariest episodes.
Wait, your brother was in that, wasn't he, Jason?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jason's brother was in that episode.
Really?
Yeah, it's my brother.
Wow.
Looks kind of just like him, I guess you're wondering.
Did he play Aaron? Oh, okay. Oh, I'm like, I can't believe I missed that.
Good memory, DJ. Good memory. I wasn't gonna say anything. I was just gonna see if anybody liked.
Oh wow, that's I learned something new.
One of the things that I stupidly thought would make sense when we started the show was that here are these stories that are made up by kids, and I wanted our audience to think that they were truly made up and it's not a TV show. So therefore I had a mandate at the beginning that's like, okay, we'll never use an actor twice. One actor playing a different role twice, unlike Sardo, obviously you're going to use the same actor. that went out the window because I ran out of actors. but especially shooting in Montreal, which is predominantly French speaking, it was hard getting a lot of actors. But it was your brother in any? He was in another episode. Was he in 2 episodes, or is that the one?
One.
Yeah, he was the one. But we did have kids who were little kids in 1 episode, and then 2 seasons later, they're 3 years older and they're in another episode. So
I mean, there's a reason you do those searches and you find like those Hollywood actors that were on Are You Afraid of the Dark. It's because DJ employed all of them in Canada, like all of them.
Everyone got a job.
Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal, like they all worked.
And every so often we'd find gems like Richard and Jason and all that. And other times it wasn't always so good. You know? I would joke with some of the episodes that I directed with the younger kids, because we had all ages of kids in the show too, where I'd say, if the camera was on, you could have cut this episode with me playing the role, because I'd have to literally do everything and say the line, and the kid would come in and say the line. You know?
What was that process like? Did you basically put out notices, casting calls, or at like malls and stuff, or schools?
That was all casting directors.
Okay.
They knew who their talent was. And we, like Jason pointed out, I live in Los Angeles, so we start to a casting call in LA, go to Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, usually to New York, and then end up in Montreal. And there was one year, it was the year we shot Cutter's Treasure, actually.
You were in Florida too. That's how you got Joanna. Wasn't Joanna in Florida?
Yeah, she came from Florida. She came from Tampa. We didn't actually go there. She sent a tape in. And she's the one actress that I actually did not cast.
Oh,
Only
really?
Because I was on vacation in Italy at the time. And my partner said, trust me, she's great. You're going to love her. And he was right. So the year we shot Cutter's Treasure with both you guys, it was the first episode of the season that we shot. I think it was season 3 or 4. I don't remember which one. But I'd just done the junket across the continent, ended up in Montreal. And the day I ended up in Montreal, I had this horrible fever. And I was like, oh God, something's going on. I don't know what it is. So I had to go to the hotel, and I went to bed, and I woke up the next morning and I took a shower. I looked in the mirror. I'm like, uh-oh. I called the production doctor and said, I think I have the chicken pox.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That's right.
You don't have the chicken pox. Get out of here. I'm like, I never had it. I never had it. So she came to the hotel room and she says, all right, show me. She goes, oh God, you have the chicken pox. So the whole time prepping Cutter's Treasure, I was doing it from the hotel room and got out of quarantine just before we started shooting the episode.
And remember with Cutter's Treasure, like they were going to shoot 35 and he had a crane and you had all sorts of like things you never used before. So it was very cool. Yeah.
And the hotel was all prepped from a little hotel in Saint Laurent. Oh boy.
Where there's a will, there's a way, right?
Yeah.
Was there, now speak for all, what was the most episode that stands out that you have all worked on in Are You Afraid of the Dark?
I can tell you 2 for me. The first one, Magic Specs, only because like today it's all, it's all done by computer graphics certainly, but that scene with the seance, for one of better expression, the crystal ball, the whole thing, we were on a platform all on springs, and they were moving this to get that whole effect. Now of course they don't do that today, but that was all done right there. And it looks great. It still does, because I saw the episode several months ago. And it still looks great. But that was all done. There's just a bunch of guys there pushing down on these springs and having the whole room move. That one. And also, I think it was Tale of the Carved Stone. Forgive me if I'm getting the titles mixed up. Frank Gorshan, the original Riddler. I had no idea he was doing the role. No idea until I got to the table reading. I got there and there was Frank Gorshan. For me, this was just like the Riddler. He was just a joy for me. I can't speak about the rest of the crew, the producer, the director. But for me, it was a joy working with him. He was the first one. He had this thing. It was like a old style transistor radio, the antenna, the whole thing, because we were shooting up and around the mountain in Montreal at that point. And he would be checking his stocks on this thing. He'd say, "Oh, I'm up. Oh, geez, I'm down. Oh, I'm down. Oh, I'm up. No, I'm up again." He was doing this between every take. He was the first guy I ever knew that would track his stock, and he had this this gizmo that was doing that. I mean, so far ahead of its time. But he was so much fun for me. It was a joy to work with him.
I don't, sometimes I don't pay attention to the credits. I did not realize in The Tale of the Carved Stone that the original Riddler was in that episode.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Oh, he was a joy to work with. I loved him. I loved working with him.
So Richard, what was it like? There was a guy, he was a young guy, lived in Montreal, and we were fortunate, and talk about being able to use or not wanting to use actors over again, but then we needed to it. But then when we found some that were really good, we kept using them over and over again. And one of those guys was Jay Baruchel.
Yep. I did that episode with
him.
Yep.
So do you remember working with him?
Yes. Definitely. Definitely. I remember he was actually my muse for a screenplay that I wrote. Actually, yeah. No, Jay was he was wonderful, and a very good friend of mine was in that too. Eleanor Noble became friends after. But yeah, I certainly remember working with Jay. Absolutely.
He's a guy that had such great, even at a young age, had great comic timing.
Yeah,
and great stage presence. So to put him together with Sardou was pretty. If you get a chance to see that episode, Time Trap, I think it was. Check that out with Richard and Jay
Baruchel,
playing off of each other.
Now, DJ, am I wrong? I mean, I'm sure there have been other series, I'm sure, that have gone through this, but it was off the air for a couple of seasons. I mean, it stopped. Then, as I understand it, was fan demand and perhaps the economics of it, I have no idea. It came back. And I think that was the season that Jay and I did that in.
Yeah.
But it was off for a couple of seasons. Like they thought, okay, well, that's the end of it. It's had its life. And then suddenly, the fans wanted it back and it came back.
Then you got a call again. Right?
Yeah.
It was the reason, it's a very simple reason that happened. It's a little different models nowadays, but back then the cable channels, they only needed 65 episodes. That was it. Because if you're going to strip the show 5 days a week, 13 week schedule, 13 times 5 is 65. So we always knew that 65 was our goal and that was going to be it. And in fact, when I directed the Midnight Society scenes in the first season, and then it got to be too much, that I had other directors to do it. But when we got to episode 65, I was like, it was an episode I wrote and directed called The Night Shift. And I was like, no, I'm directing the last Midnight Society campfire scene. So I came back to do that one campfire. It was, I have a very distinct memory, actually. It was so sad. We shot that last scene. It was over. And then we had a little champagne afterwards to say goodbye while they're tearing down the forest in the background. It was so perfect. Just like the bulldozers are coming in, tearing it all apart. I'm like, well, I guess it's really over. But so what had happened was we did our 65 and it was over, done. I did a deal with Disney and I was doing Disney stuff. And the way it works, the Canadian company at the time that owned the rights to it, they sold the rights internationally. And the way rights are sold internationally is for periods of time. And the period was like 5 years. So now the show started in 92, it's now 96. Those 5-year licenses are starting to run out. So what they wanted is they want all the various foreign places to relicense it again. And so it was the Canadian company that came to me to say, we would love to actually add new episodes to sweeten the pot, so to speak, to entice them to relicense the first 65. What if we also offer a new 13 and 13? So for me, by then the wounds had healed at that point. I was a couple of years off, and Nickelodeon wasn't as interested. In fact, they just became a licensor at that point, even though they were still driving the bus because they're the big gorilla. But that's why I came back, is because the Canadian company said, we want to relicense the first 65. Let's sweeten the pot and see if we can make some more. So do you want to come back and do it? And that's why we went back. But by then, most of the Midnight Society kids had aged out. so we the one kid who's the youngest, Daniel, was able to come back to be in the Midnight Society. And then we had a whole new Midnight Society.
So the Midnight Society part was done in an actual forest, or was it done in the sound?
My mother, at one point she goes,
it was shot on the soundstage, and DJ would schedule all of the Midnight Society stuff together. We'd shoot all 13 in one block, right? So it was like, I don't know, a month and a half, a work or a year or something like that, depending on the schedule. But it was hysterical because, you know, when you first started shooting, it would look great, but by like week 3 or 4, you know, they're spray painting the trees. You know what I mean? Like it just, you know, it's just like it's a Christmas tree forest, basically, is really what it is.
In one year in the last 2 seasons, the fire department almost shut us down. They're like, this is a fire hazard in here, because a lot of it was real foliage they cut down and brought in. And Frank, as Jason was saying, it's drying out by week 2. And the grid, the lighting grid in that studio was, I don't think it'd been cleaned since 1946. And so, you know, the dust is this thick, and they're like, one spark and this thing's going up.
Well, it's like the first season we were at Chapman, is it Chapman Studios in Montreal? Like, you know, it overlooks like the St. Lawrence. It's very nice, right? The next season we were like in this, it was like a shipping warehouse. It was like a warehouse, like, so these big rigs are kind of coming in, you know what I mean? Like, I remember looking up one day, I'm like, is that asbestos up there? Like, it was.
Yeah, right. Well, it was when we first started shooting the show, the film industry in Montreal was not doing that well. So we were like the only game in town. We were great. We had a carte blanche, had great offices, we had good sound stage. It was great. And then as the years went on, the film industry in Montreal started picking up. And so suddenly we're competing with like Spielberg. So suddenly our offices are getting smaller, and we're finding warehouses and stuff like that. Yeah.
How would
the trees more and more flammable?
How would you guys compare working in Canada as opposed to Los Angeles?
I'm not touching that one. You better go, Richard, on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, I can say yeah, it's the same. Okay. I mean, their working rules are different, and it was, for me, it was more the real distinction wasn't so much Canada as it was French Canada, where English is a second language. Yeah. I ended up learning enough French to get by in the set. But there's one story. It was the guy who was our art director, production designer, Réal Proulx, who created so many of those amazing sets and made a different Magic Mansion every time we did a Sardou thing. English is a distant second language for him. And he's such a creative guy. But at one point I wrote in the script, I forgot which script it was. I wrote, so-and-so walks into and the room is turned upside down. Now, to an American, that means it's a mess. No, the room's turned upside down. But Réal came to me just like, oh, DG, I can't turn the room upside down. I'm like, well, why? Just throw some things around. What are you talking about? Just open a drawer and throw. And he goes, well, no, you need to turn the whole room upside down. I'm like, no, you don't have to turn the room upside down. That's a euphemism. Wow.
Very literal.
And we'll give one other difference, and it was a little bit of bone of contention when we first started the show. French culture is very different than American culture, or I should say French Canadian culture is very different. And it wasn't that odd for the crew to be drinking wine at lunch. And it was like, oh no, we still have a full day, half day to shoot. You cannot be drinking wine at lunch. And so it was a little bit of political, but they reneged, I think.
And there are children.
And there were children right here. You can't have it. You're cracking up another bottle? Oh, okay, fine.
You know what? That's actually is even relative to Los Angeles. You know, it's so funny to me, like, you know, I go to different lunches, you know, you could be like you and an agent, like somewhere in Beverly Hills or whatever. I remember having a lunch with an agent. He was from London, and we sit down for lunch and he orders like a cocktail, and he sees the look on my face, kind of like, you know, you sure you want to do that, right? Because it's just, you don't do that in LA, which is hysterical because they're doing lines of Coke in the bathroom. I don't know why they don't want to like drink at lunch, but so again, for DJ, I would think that would be a very, you're drinking wine at lunch? Like, what's going on, you know?
And my biggest concern, I mean, it wasn't even a moralistic thing. It was just like, we only have X amount of hours to shoot this. And we got kids, like Richard said, we got kids. And I need everybody working on all cylinders. As much as you say, oh, it's a little kid show, somehow that's harder because you have less money, less time. Richard's story about moving the table around like that, my standard statement with any of these shows I do is like, we don't have enough money to fake it, so we have to do it for real. So it's a lot more expensive to do a cool CGI thing with a table floating than it is to put it on a mattress and then do this. So you have to find ways to do it, and you don't do that when you had a couple glasses of wine. You need to be right on time. So that was one big difference.
As you know, speaking, I mean, I used to be, as I spoke with Richard before, I used to go to SUNY Plattsburgh, and all the times I used to go up to Montreal. And I knew one time, I went to this amusement park in Montreal, Laurent.
Yes.
Did you shoot an episode in Laurent for Playland in one of your episodes?
Yeah, it was Laughing in the Dark.
Mm.
It was one of our, I think it's our second episode in the season, and it was kind of fun because we got there, whole crew got there, had crew call, moved all the equipment in, and we still had a little bit for the official crew call before we were able to, before they closed the park, before we could start working. So it's just like, let's go on the rides. So basically we all went through the park and went all the rides at Laurent, and then had to get to work.
Wasn't it also in for the Tale of the Silver site as well?
I don't know where that was shot. The merry-go-round, I don't know where that was shot. I wasn't there for that. Could have been. Is there another merry-go-round in Montreal I'm not aware of?
Not that I'm aware of. There is now, but that's only been the last couple of years. The big kind of like the one that's in London, the same sort of thing.
Oh no, merry-go-round, the one with the horses.
Yeah, no. Oh, with the horse? No, not that I'm aware of. There may be. Yeah. Or they may have just, they have those traveling ones that go around to, shopping malls sometimes, and they set them up in the parking lot. It may have been one of those things.
I think that's what it was. That's my memory of it. It wasn't at Laurent. Because all we needed was the merry-go-round. We didn't need anything else.
Oh.
Yeah.
That seems like it.
Jason and Richard, I know you've had pretty great careers. Aside from Are You Afraid of the Dark, do you have any other highlights that you'd like to talk about from your careers? Jason?
I kind of stopped acting after college. I did. It's funny that DJ brought up Ron Oliver, because Ron directed the last episode of television I ever did. So as we talked about, my brother came on and was on my show. My brother would go on to be a series regular on Breaker High with Ryan Gosling, and I ended up doing a role playing his brother. Actually, their last episode directed by Ron Oliver. So by the time I was 19, I stopped acting, and actually since then I've done more things like producing and things like that. So but I come back to Are You Afraid of the Dark a lot, just because it was the first time I was on set. It was the first time I saw a crew. It was the first, so it demystified the experience. And even now as a producer, or even just interacting with actors, it had such a huge impact, because you to have that experience when you're 14 years old, it really sets you up for later on. So I just think about Are You Afraid as such a seminal thing in my life, and not simply just creatively or as an actor, but just personally, because of the experience.
That's great.
Yeah, and even with the experience, I even pictured it, how cool would it be to just have few of your friends in common, just going into the woods in a campfire and just tell a story that, there's nothing cool on like that. I would love to do that now if I could.
Yeah, and Richard is the preeminent voice talent in Canada. He's the man.
Well, kind of you to say, but yeah, that's one of the things I'm certainly proud of here. I've been fortunate enough that I've directed the last 5 Assassin's Creeds. I don't know if you're gamers or not, but I've voice directed the last 5 of them, including Valhalla. I can talk about it now. Valhalla, which was their biggest grossing game to date, Ubisoft's, and they've sold a lot of big ones. So I'm very, very proud of that. Very proud of that. There's been a lot of things. It's just where do you pick, Jason? What would you do? I worked with Burt Lancaster not that long before he passed. Wow. When he played P.T. Barnum. That was fabulous. Ron Oliver. I got to work with Robert Wagner and Louise Fletcher just a little while ago on the Dennis the Menace Christmas movie. And then Ron called me, and I went to Halifax to do the St. Bernard Beethoven, to one of the Beethoven films. So I still keep in contact with Ron Oliver. Cool. That's for sure. So those are some highlights for sure. Absolutely.
It's remarkable that, given what Richard's saying now, that when you do a job, it's a job, and you're into it and you do the best you can, and whether it's a movie or a show, or whether you're producing or acting, whatever it is, and it's over. And time goes on and you don't really think that much about it. Occasionally someone will say, oh, you were in that, or you produced, or whatever it is. It's like, yeah, fine. If you had said to me 30 years ago, you'd be talking about Are You Afraid of the Dark 30 years later, I like, what? No, it was great. It was fine, but you can't escape it. It's a good thing. I'm saying that as a positive thing. So it's really nice to have that on legacy, something that meant so much to so many people, because we've all got stuff that has come and gone. It's been good, bad, or indifferent, but it's come and gone. Not this man. And in fact, when we went back to this couple of new seasons, we had pretty much the same crew, more or less the same crew. And I sat down at the first production meeting and I looked at all these faces and I quoted Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and I said, welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. Ladies and gentlemen, Are You Afraid of the Dark? And it was off to the races on 2 more seasons. So it's a really fun legacy to have been part of and think back on.
It was a blessing for me. It was just, I just had so much fun. And as DJ says, 30 years after, amazing.
And we're literally coming up on the 30th anniversary of when the pilot aired.
Yeah.
So,
and Richard, it definitely shows in your performance that you had a lot of fun. It was very apparent, very awesome. And kudos to all of you.
Well, DJ let me run with it, and it was, like I say, just a blessing. And I went with it. When he said run, I went with it. So
someone did a video, a fan did a video that I saw a couple of years ago, and it made me laugh out loud. Now, granted, I'm inclined because it's my show, but it was all clips of Richard Sardou lines. And it was all of the, did you ever see this, Richard? It was some fan who put it together. You should look it up. It's awesome. Really? And it's just like, no, Mr. Accent on the Joe. No, Mr. Accent. It's all from all the different episodes. And then, and I even remember writing this to think, okay, we've heard him say that so many times. We know it's a thing. Let's riff off of that a little bit. And so there's something that's just like, no, skip it.
Yeah, exactly.
And you got to look at it. It's so much fun.
And did you tell me, DJ, or did I dream it? Did you tell me that Sardou, the name, came from a soap or something that you had used or something? It was called Sardou.
It was I don't know if it still exists, but I remember as a little kid there was a bath oil called Sardou, and it was like a lady's bath oil, and the commercials are always kind of gauzy and the music. And the thing was like, Sardou, take me away. That's where that came from.
That's cool.
There you go. A little bit of trivia there. Would the three of you guys ever work again in the future together?
Yeah.
I'd love it. Absolutely. Work with DJ? Absolutely. Jason as well. DJ and
Richard, nice meeting you for the first time.
And I'll be there.
Well, I'll tell you, when I did write an Are You Afraid of the Dark movie for Pare-Coull, I think I told you this, Richard. I wrote back in 96 or 7, whenever it was. I did write an Are You Afraid of the Dark feature for Paramount that ended up going nowhere. They actually said it was too scary. And I made it a Sardou movie. It was Sardou to be in the feature. And so I guess that answers your question right there. I said yes, but it was before we did the final 2 seasons. It was in between there, and it was a Sardou story.
I'll tell you, I would watch that for sure. That sounds amazing.
Fan it for sure.
Yeah, The Adventures of Sardou, coming soon.
I'd watch it.
Or even a Dr. Vince film would be good. The Chronicles of Dr. Vince.
One of the fun things about Dr. Vince, and this really speaks to what we've been talking about a little bit, all of us have been talking about, is just how much, and this is so cliche, but it's so true, but this show really became family. I mean, there's a Midnight Side and the actors, because we're all working together at the same time. And what would happen was we'd be sitting around the set and people would throw ideas out for different characters that Dr. Vince could play. And I think it was Lorette LeBlanc, the continuity person, who said, wouldn't it be great if he was a chef? And I was like, I can go with that. And so I wrote The Tale of the Dangerous Soup, where he became a chef. So that's the kind of show that it was, that everyone's throwing out ideas, everyone was open to other people's ideas, and that made the show that much better. And that's, you really, in any production you're working on, you wish that kind of symbiotic thing could happen.
Yeah.
I think what also I think what gets missed maybe a little bit, and I want to put a fine point on this, is that when you work on a show, whether it's a TV show or a movie, invariably the production takes on the personality of the creator, or at least the most important person in the room. And in case of DJ, he's an extreme talent, but he's also an extremely kind and sweet man who is beloved by his crew and by his actors. And I think that permeates the show, honestly, and it is a rarity. And again, if you're going to do a talk about Are You Afraid of the Dark and talk about its longevity and talk about the impact it's had on people, it's actually a story that's not really focused on, because that really is the special sauce. That's really what made it run. And again, I've worked on a lot of things. You get maybe talented people, but you got people that are awful. And, the fish stinks from the head, but not in this case.
Well, that's kind
well
of
said. Well said.
Yeah. There was I did feel that once. Well, I felt that more than once, that people love being on the show, because we did a show that it's actually an episode that's some people's favorites. It's my least favorite because it was the hardest show to shoot hardest episode to shoot that we did. And I directed it, and we had bitten off more than we could chew. It was too big of an episode. There was too much to do. We overreaching. And it was the only episode that took an extra day to shoot, because there was just so much to shoot. And, we had no money. And this was at the end of one of the seasons. And so we were going to have to pay the crew an additional day. But the union rules say, if you work a 6th day, you get paid time and a half. Now, to us, every penny counted. It's like, oh my God. So it's bad enough we have to shoot an extra day. Now we have to pay time and a half. And so the crew got together, and there was a union rule that says, if the crew gets together and they vote unanimously to work at straight time, then you can work at straight time. And the crew unanimously voted, say, we'll work at straight time.
I was actually there for that. I remember that.
Oh, really?
I was there. No, because it was the campfire. Because I also remember it because I think it was either the 2nd season, but you were like exhausted. Like DJ was like trying to do campfire stuff, but he wasn't. So he had his like first AD that was directing, and who was great, by the way. But DJ literally was exhausted. Like, I still remember the makeup and hair people like rubbing him down between takes. Like, he was just done.
Feeding me Milky Ways.
No, they were, but like in a really like loving way. I mean, these were people that were legitimately concerned for his health, because he was just so run down and exhausted from the entire creative process.
But it was the hardest thing I ever did, and the best thing I ever did. It was that much fun, and to a person, everyone we worked with was what. It also helps that people were only in for a week with the actors. No one gets sick of anybody at that point. I don't know about the 6th week, actors are like, we out of here, let's get out of here. But working for that 1 week, we always had fresh blood in every week, so got new energy and all that kind of stuff. So it really did help. It was kind words. Thank you very much.
Richard, how important is collaboration on a set for you?
It's very important, very important. I mean, I unfortunately have been on sets where that wasn't the case. It was sort of every man and woman for themselves. It does happen. And clearly, artistically, that's just such a bad vibe to go in with, and to be present in that, and to try to rise above that, for me, can be extremely difficult. So collaboration is, I think, primary.
Yeah.
I remember there's one Richard story, and I'm forgetting exactly which episode it was or whatever, but Richard came in to be, I was probably directing the episode, to be Sardo again. And the fun thing about actors is that actors, perform for however many days they're doing the episode, and then they're gone. It's over. Me, I'm looking at them. I'm looking at their nose hairs for weeks on end as I'm seeing this footage. I'm poring over. I know everything about them. So I'll run into actors that I directed. I'm like, hey, how's it going? And they're like, who are you? It's like, but you know them intimately. And there was one point, I'm forgetting the exact circumstance. I don't know if we were on the set, Richard, or maybe it was, I forgot what it was. But we were talking about the scene. And Richard started doing the scene, and he wasn't being Sardo. I was like, no, you kind of have to have this. And he's like, okay, yeah, right. And then he like, you had to gear back up into Sardoga. But I knew Sardo so intimately because I'd seen so much of the thing. And Richard did it for a couple of days. But so it's like, no, you gotta, and then he clicked right into it at that point. Like, okay, got it. Perfect.
Do it this way.
For one thing, Richard, I know that for your character, Mr. Sardo was all about magic. Are you a fan of magic in real life?
I am a fan of magic. I really am. I was when I was a kid, I used to buy books on magic and try to, do these magic tricks for my mom. And of course, she was, oh, that was great. And she was almost my guinea pig. But yes, very much so. Very much. The place in Los Angeles, I'm sure, DJ, the Magic Mansion. Is it called the Magic Mansion?
Magic Castle.
It is, right? I went there with Ron, as a matter of fact, and I couldn't believe this. There's a place where all this goes on under one roof. It was fabulous, and everybody knew Ron. It was something else. Yeah, so yeah, I'm a fan for sure, for sure.
Well,
Sleight of hand. I don't know how they do it. Right there, watching them, and they do it.
Magic.
Yeah, magic. That's right. It's magic.
Cool. Richard, so I'm curious, you've done obviously live action, you've done animation, video games. When it comes to live action work and voice work, do you approach them the same way?
Yes and no. Live action, clearly they see me. Animation, I'm behind a microphone, although sometimes, especially when you're doing original animation, they will animate to you. They have the characters certainly, but they have that drawn, but they'll actually formulate, the lips, all that to what you're doing, expressions that you do. I think if you saw certainly Aladdin with Robin Williams, you'd see they use that quite a bit. So it's just a different medium. It's just a different approach, really.
Right.
You have to rely on your voice as the instrument.
Right. Definitely.
Which can be harder.
I've started to get into animation now. I'm back in TV, and I'm so in awe of what these performers can do with their voices. It is just remarkable. And talk about magic. It's, you put something on the page and suddenly, yeah, I mean, you can say that about all actors, but with animation, with voice actors, they only have one tool. That's it. And they can use that too. It's really wonderful. And the variety that they give you and the choices they make and the nuance they add, it's really pretty remarkable.
Definitely. That's awesome.
For one thing, I just want to say to all is that I have been a big fan of Are You Afraid of the Dark? And thank you all for being a part of that creation. I have a 2-year-old son, although I have not shown any episodes yet because I don't want any nightmares, or my wife is going to kill me, but I am sure he's definitely going to be watching them with me. I will not be showing him anything from the new reboot at all. I don't think that's something like, if he wants the real stuff, I'm showing what has been happening in 19.
There may be one episode you might show from the reboot.
Yeah, there may be.
If that's included, yeah.
I'll tell you one thing, it's kind of a little inside baseball too, is that one thing we did know when you're making a kid shows live on.
Yeah.
And when we were making the show, we thought, okay, we're not talking about the monsters now. We're talking about the kids, like particularly the Midnight Society kids. It's like, we don't want someone watching the show even 3 years from now and say, oh my God, this is so dated. Look at the big bell bottoms there were, or whatever it happens to be. So we deliberately tried to dress the kids preppy. Something because preppy is timeless. So, khaki, it's button down shirt, it's stuff that it's not stylish at all. Because the more stylish you get, the sooner it's going to look dated. So I'm sure there's a lot that does look dated still, but still, you watch an episode today, you're not going to go, oh my God, can you believe the neon, whatever. It's like, we went preppy across the board.
Nice.
So when your 2-year-old watches it, hopefully she won't say.
Oh, it's going to look current now. It's going to look actually cutting edge, right? Because it's 30 years.
Yeah.
They're like, wow, look at those coveralls. Like,
You got those vineyard vines?
My son, I might show him the tale of the hatching, where you send your kids to boarding school or something.
Richard, I meant to ask earlier, but you're one of the few recurring characters. It's actually an adult. Was that weird in any way, or was it how was that experience?
No, that was actually a lot of fun. I mean, I liked working with younger people, always have, and because the scripts for me, the ones that Sardo was in, I thought they were just wonderful. So I really enjoyed working with the younger cast. I mean, I got to work with people, as DJ was saying, like Jay Baruchel, who I just admire greatly. It was wonderful working with people like that. Really, really, really wonderful. Some very good talent. Really good talent.
It's fun having a recurring character like Sardo, because Richard would do stuff that I'm like, oh, that's really good, and then I'll use it and push it further and go back to it, because it's like taking that bag of tricks, using it again, and then expanding on it, and knowing. And I love to write something for an actor, like someone talented like Richard, and just say, I know exactly how he's going to do this, and I do it. And then if I did direct it or not, he'll do it. I'm like, yep, that's exactly what you did. There we go. And so it's a fun collaborative process.
Yeah.
The more you work together, it's really satisfying, and it's really fun.
It's so cool.
Yeah. Actually, this is one of my questions for Jason. For the Are You Afraid of the Dark? The answer came to you is that your character was that you were afraid of the dark. How did that come up?
You'd have to ask DJ. I mean, DJ wrote it. I mean,
it was just because it was ironic, because here's the guy who's the strongest of the group, the most bold of the group. It's like he admits that he's afraid of the dark.
No, I mean, I actually vividly remember shooting that episode. I mean, I even remember the camera moves and like crossing over because I had tripped on the track, no, I mean, look, when you know what the name of the show is, and then you're doing this episode where we air this sort of dirty laundry, I mean, it's cool. It's cool to be a part of that. It's awesome.
It's also just to not have two-dimensional or one-dimensional characters too. It's just like, let's get into them a little deeper, which is a challenge, because with the Midnight Society, they're in it for a minute and a half in the beginning of the episode, and then 30 seconds at the end. So you really got to shorthand some stuff to give them characters. And I think we did a pretty good job. One of the things I tried to do is make sure that in whatever the kinds of stories that I picked for the season, that it would go to the right storyteller. I mean, an easy one was Vink, because Frank always told the Vink stories, or Gary always told the Sardo stories. So that was the easy one. But I try to match the type of story with the character. And something that's satisfying is that a lot of times you do something creatively for a reason, and you hope someone gets it. You're not just doing it for doing it. And I've seen a lot of people saying about, oh, that was a Gary story. That was a Frank story. It did work. And one of my favorites was Betty Ann, because Betty Ann was the sweet, nicest girl, and she told the most macabre stories there were. It was so that was again playing against character. So it was tricky in that short. And for me too, is Jason pointed out before, that we shot all those scenes at the same time. You would shoot one in the morning, one in the afternoon, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. So that put the pressure on me, is that I had to have all the scripts, or at least all the stories, ready to go towards the beginning of the season, because the campfire scene couldn't be, tonight's story is a really scary story about a really scary thing, and I call this story, I told this all, you add it later. So I had to make sure that all those campfires made sense to what the actual story was, which put the pressure on to get it done early. So the script.
To DJ's credit too, it wasn't simply just the anthology part of it, introducing the story. Like, people have to ask me, like, oh, well, tell me about the stories you told. And I was like, and it's fine, but I didn't tell that many stories. I spent more time messing around the campfire. Like, that's kind of what my shtick was, or whatever. And I was fine, I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, everybody got 2 stories a year, because with 6 kids. Yeah. 13 episodes. That's all you get.
Cool. So guys, before we go, I just wanted to go around and say if is there any projects you're working on now that you can discuss? Any plugs, Richard?
I'm lucky enough to be working on 3 series right now, none of which I can talk about, and one animated feature that I cannot talk about. But the animation business here in Montreal is thriving right now. It really is, as is the gaming. Certainly, everybody knows that. But the animation is really something now. It really has picked up big time.
Also, because of the pandemic too. That's a lot of people are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's amazing. Well, I'm talking right now from my small studio that I've had here for about 5 years now or so. I talked about being blessed to work with Are You Afraid of the Dark. I was also blessed to be working on this last Assassin's Creed, only because I knew 6 months before the pandemic struck, a year ago this month, that I was going to be busy on the game from March, of the first week of March till the second week of July. I was recording it in Copenhagen and London mostly, and then when this hit, I did it all from here. So I was directing actors, I kid you, as I was just a week ago, actually, was now doing the downloadable content, the DLC for it, in Oslo, Reykjavik, certainly London, Copenhagen, all from right here. It's really literally changed the way our business, my side of the business anyway, that I'm involved with presently, it's changed the way that we're operating and will operate.
True.
It truly has.
I mean, I've been doing this show. Matt has been doing his show. We've been co-hosting together for the past over a year now through Zoom.
Almost a year. I've
almost
done nostalgia time since since July, actually, since the start of the pandemic, with our first show that we have done on Ghostbusters,
right?
Our title.
So yeah, Zoom has become our studio. So we're grateful for that, you know. Jason, any projects you can talk about?
No, I'm I'm working on a feature right now, but I can't talk about it.
Damn it. Okay. Okay. Mum's the word.
Well, I mean, it's the nature of this business that as soon as you talk about something, it falls apart.
Yeah, exactly. It's behind me. You can see the cards on the board. I'm talking about it.
All right, fair enough. Last but not least, DJ, what are you working on that you could talk about?
Well, I can talk about a couple of things. It was interesting. After doing kids TV for so long, the pendulum swung away from the kinds of shows that I did, which are dramas, and at least live action anyway. It went to all comedy. And I just don't do that. So I started writing books. So I over the past 10 years, I've published like 25 books. Go to my website, djmchaleBooks.com. But the pendulum has swung back a little bit. So now, mostly I think due to the streamers, that suddenly there are things coming. So I've got 2 shows in development right now. Who knows if either are going to go to series? You don't know. One's animated; it's a really fun adventure science fiction thing, and another one is a live action science fiction comedy type thing. Oh, actually, yeah, I can't promote something. This is and I don't know if I said this on the podcast. Yeah, I think I did. There is a TV show on Apple TV Plus called Ghostwriter. It's a reboot of a series that was on in the 90s, which ironically I wrote the pilot for. I have nothing to do with the Ghostwriter reboot series other than I wrote a book for them because it's a series about literature and reading and all that kind of stuff. So they asked me if I would write a book for them. In the first season, the 4 books they did were Jungle Book, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, Frankenstein, and then original book that I wrote. First season, they won the Emmy for Best Kids Show, actually. They're doing a second season, and they approached me. They say, we're going to do this kind of extra thing called Ghostwriter Beyond the Page, and we're going to help kids who are dealing with the pandemic, who are stuck at home. So we wanted to do these little 11-minute videos of this one character from the show struggling and learning how to write a story. And we're going to bring in characters from the various episodes from the first season and whatnot. And we'd like you to host it. Cool. It's like, really? Ooh, okay, so that's fine. I'll do it. Wow. So it drops April 1st, actually. If you get Apple TV Plus, I'm the host of this show.
A subscriber for it.
Okay, April 1st, you can watch Ghostwriter Beyond the Page. And the reason I went to that much detail is because we shot it at my house. I was the crew. I was the DP, the lighting, the thing, the sound, the board, I had everything. the lugger upstairs. And at one point, so I'm sitting with this, one of the books from Ghost Rider, and I'm sitting in this chair in front of my fireplace, and I realized, oh my God, I've become the old guy in front of the fireplace that I was making fun of before. Oh no. Ah! It literally didn't hit me until I'm sitting there like this guy. Oh, I'm the old guy. That's what I get for making fun of whoever that character was supposed to be all those years. I become that character. So Ghost Rider Beyond the Page, April 1st. Check it out. I'm the host. And now I shouldn't even do this because I haven't seen it yet. I may be really embarrassing. And
Sure not.
Awesome. We're looking forward to that, DJ. That sounds
Looking forward to that as well. And don't forget, we are Randy and I, we're going to be doing a retro. We're going to pop the champagne off. We'll be talking about our favorite episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah.
oh, awesome.
Sounds good.
So that's tonight. But guys, I want to thank you so much for this. This was amazing. And congratulations on 30 years, the anniversary.
You're here, DJ. Good for
Yeah.
you.
For everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. So we
Thanks,
got
guys.
DJ McHale, Jason Sharon, and Richard M. Dumont. Gentlemen, thank you again. And my co-host in this journey, this adventure, Matt Haberman, Kid Champagne, Mr. Matt Haberman. Thank you all. And I want to thank everyone watching right now and listening. And you could feel free to go to the Unger the Radar YouTube page to subscribe and share that. There's a bunch of videos there, other interviews and episodes and commentaries. And yeah, just thank you. This was really great. I'll see you guys soon. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Take care, guys.